Hi everybody, Gary Chavez here. A couple months back, Edo made this great video called entitled "Game Mechanics or Rules That Ruin Board Games," and it's a great video. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. And I'll put a link to the video in the description. And it's great, particularly for designers, to understand what rules really, game mechanics really make a good game, bad. Me personally, I wrote an article recently for Meeple Mountain called the OODA Loop: How to Use a Military Concept to Make Good Games Even Better. And I really thought the concept of the OODA Loop could really expand on Edo's discussion in his video. In Edo's video, well, first of all, he basically asked this question: what rule game mechanics or rules ruin board games? And he put it on Twitter and other social media, Facebook and so forth, and he got a great response to it. And he basically gathered all the responses and grouped them into 5 categories. And as I see it, the OODA loop really even ties those 5 categories together in one common concept. And I think the OODA loop also explains why those game mechanics or rules ruin game designs. And I'll put a link to the OODA loop article, to my OODA loop article in the description. For those not familiar with the OODA loop, OODA is actually an acronym, and it stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. And it describes the general decision-making process, and it's used primarily by the military, and that's how I got to know it. I spent 20 years in the Air Force, and this stuff was kind of drilled into us. And the OODA loop is used uh, to improve planning, war operations, and so forth. Generally understand the decision-making process. But while it might have originated in the military, it's also been applied to many other fields like business, even martial arts. Um, Anywhere where decision-making process has to be analyzed, and where understanding that better helps improve the process overall. So let me explain to you how, as I see it, as I said in the article, how the OODA loop applies to gameplay. So, on a player's turn, they're deciding what to do, and they're going through these 4 steps: the observe, orient, decide, and act. So, in the observe step, the player is just gathering data. Suppose that a player is playing chess. And in the observe step, the player is looking at the pieces of the board, looking where they are, looking what they are, particular pieces they are. There's no, there's just a gathering of data here. There's no assigning meaning to the data yet, and the assigning of meaning actually happens in the orient step. They they're gathering that raw data to assess the state of the game and assessing trends in the game. For example, if again, if we're playing chess, the player is assessing, oh, are my pieces vulnerable? Are my opponent's pieces vulnerable? How long will it be until I may win the game? How long will it be till I might win? How I might be how when I might lose the game, and so forth. This is a step where the player's individuality first comes into the loop. Um, the 2 players may look at the same data, but depending on their experience, they may give a completely different meanings. Certainly, a new player will give a different meaning to a set of data than an experienced player, or even a aggressive player, a bold player, may give us the same data a different meaning than a cautious player. So this is where player individuality first comes in, and the second part where it comes in is in the decide step. Um, in the decide step, the player is listing all all the possible responses to the state of the game. Um, Preferably, what responses are there to create benefit for the player, or at least a disadvantage to other players. So in say again the chess example, they're listing, well, I can move my pawn, I can move my king here, I can move my queen, I can move my rook, listing all the possible ways that they can do what they want to do. They're choosing a response um, based on the assessment of the game. And again, this is where player individuality comes in. A two players may have the same list of possible responses, but a bold player and a cautious player are going to pick two separate things from that list. So the player it's this very independent on player individuality. Then in the act step, in the side step, there at the end of the side step, the player decides on one action to take, and the action is taken during the act step. And in addition to actually doing what they decide to do in the act step, as I see it, the act step is where the player changes the state of the game. Preferably, they change the state of the game to their advantage, or certainly change the state of the game to disadvantage the other players, their opponents. Um, so by changing the state, that now the other players are the start cycle starts for them. Now they have to go through the observe, orient, decide, and act step all over again in response to changing the state of the game. So in a chess example, again, it's the moving of a piece or taking away a piece. So as I see it, the categories that Edo was describing really are extensions of, or really aspects of the OODA loop, and that's how the OODA loop ties all of what Edo was talking about together. They're part of. There, he was describing things, aspects of the OODA loop. For example, one of the game mechanics or rules that he said ruins the game. One of these categories was losing progress in a way that's out of the player's control. There's some part of hidden information that changes the game, or some kind of hidden objective that alters scoring. And this is directly related, as I see it, to the observe step, the gathering of data. So as a designer, our and I talk about this in the article. The key design question to address the observe step as a game designer is this: how do I provide information to the player in an intuitive manner when they need it? So what Edo was describing, I think, is a state of a game in which the player needs information because something is about to change their perception of the game. Something is about to change how the game is played, and that information was hidden from the player when they needed it. They could not observe it, and so that they basically ruined the observed step, the player's observed step in their OODA loop. The game mechanics were such that it 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 degraded their ability to observe the game. Some information was hidden when they actually need it. So your game, as I see it, our job as game designers is to deliver what information the player needs when they need it to make their decision. And if you're not delivering that, that's just not going to be a pleasant experience for the player. Ed also talked about one of the other uh, categories that Edo talked about was a genre complexity or visual direction mismatch. Somehow you looked at the game and you thought it was this kind of genre or this type of complexity, and you start playing it and you realize it's not that at all. And I think that has directly ties to the orient step of the OODA loop. So in the article, I describe one of the key design questions you should look at when to strengthen the orient step of the OODA loop for the player. The design question is, how do I minimize the steepness of my game's learning curve? And there's several ways that you as a game designer inform the player of what kind of game it is, or how to play the game. I mean, more than just rules and game components. The art, the box, the logo is also an indicator of what type of game you're trying to present to them. And as I said before, a player's individuality in the orient step, the player, this is where the player's individuality enters the game. They're drawing on their past experience to understand how to assess the game in the orient step, and through their experience, they know that they've, for the many games, for generally speaking, a light game is going to have light, casual, kind of playful art associated. Heavier games are gonna look heavier. The art's going to be a lot more complex. And so you look at the game and you look at the art and you assess to yourself, oh, it's going to be this type of game, and that that's one of the things that orients you to how the game should be played, how what kind of complexity it is, how complex it is. And when you have that genre mismatch, that that really degrades the the player's ability to orient themselves to assess the state of the game. You know, if it if I take a simple game, but there's actually very complex things to it, and, it's really got light art and light casual art, playful art, but there's this there's a complexity in it that it just, you know, it it just mismatches in a way where I begin to doubt where I can understand, if I have enough experience to understand what to do at that point. So Ed also talked about one of the categories that he mentioned was a perceived or actual imbalanced game, where one of the examples he gave was, games that only have one winning strategy, and you don't realize that until you play it a few times, or there's some kind of first player advantage, and this perceived imbalance directly relates to the decide step, where in the decide step, as I explained earlier, you're listing all the possible responses you can to assessing the state of the game, and you're choosing a response. But if there's only one winning strategy, what's the point of having the other choices? You want to give the players the freedom to have several options and have any of them work in the way that they want it to work. Each of them should provide a path to victory. And if only one does, or is one sure way to do it, then there's no real point to the decide step. Ed also mentioned obtuse rules where they were unnecessarily risky, like he mentioned in Zombicide. If I miss a target, I hit the player. And in the OODA Loop article, I explained one of the key design question to strengthen the side aspect of the OODA Loop is, how do I make the game's choices and consequences easy to understand? And again, these consequences should be intuitive. At an intuitive level, you should understand that any move that gives me a huge benefit is also going to be risky, and any move that gives me, little benefit should have little risk associated with it. And when you just kind of throw this risk in, I want to make this move, but then you throw this risk in, and it makes it difficult to decide because it's not intuitive. You want to do this, then some rule comes in and says, well, wait, there's actually more risk to that than you realize. So it makes it harder for the player to decide what to do. And finally, Edo mentioned he mentioned the other category. He mentioned actually one of the games he talked about in the beginning of his video was a game called Toasted or Roasted, and he didn't like the aspect of you needed the card to continue play. It was like, fire starter card or something like that. And if you didn't have this, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't do anything else. And he was stuck at one point. All the three of his opponents had it, and they were allowed to continue to play, but he didn't have it. So on every turn, he just kind of, shrugged, and I can't do anything. And this is really directly related to the act step. You can go through with a mechanic like that. You can go through the observe, orient, decide step. You just can't act. You can't change the state of the game without this card. And so if I can't change the state of the game, what am I doing in this game? I can do everything. I can assess the state of the game. I can assess what I want to do, but I can't change the state of the game myself to my benefit. I can only watch other people do it for themselves. So, it kind of ruin the game for him. He also mentioned the upkeep, and I think that also has to do with the act step, where you want to do something, but you have to do some additional actions also, and that kind of drags things down. Or he also mentioned the ruining of progress reset, and again, that's related to the act step, where you're trying to change the state of the game for your benefit, but if there's some mechanic in there that just kind of resets it, and if a player does it, that's a different thing. Players are supposed to, in a way, do that, and again, you kind of want the option to have that kind of interaction. But for the game to do it, for it to be designed where something out of the blue happens and your progress is reset, that really interferes with the act step and really interferes with the enjoyment of the game. And in the article I mentioned, the key design question to improve the act step is, what barriers do I need to remove so players can do what they want to do? And I want to do this. I'm an aggressive player and I want to do this, but I want to act in this way. But as an example of progress reset, I want to do this, but is it going to be a reset? And it makes the game a lot more you know uh, unnecessarily challenging, I guess to say. And so the act step is kind of degraded for them. So that's how I think the Edo's named 5 categories. I think they all aspects, all different ways to describe the OODA loop, or actually how to ruin the OODA loop. In my article, I say how to make good games even better, but I debated whether I should call it a how to ruin a good game, and in it say, here's the observe, orient, decide, act, and just take one of those and really do a bad job with one of them, throw them away, you'll make a really bad game. Um, and so I think that's what ties them together. But the OODA loop also explains why these things ruin a game, why these game mechanics or rules ruin the game. As I mentioned before, the OODA loop in the orient and decide steps, that's where player individuality enters the OODA loop. It enters the game, and so the OODA loop is a way to connect the player's individuality to gameplay. It's a critical part of the game, where the player individuality and gameplay are linked. And the more you can strengthen that, the more you can make it so that more personality. I'm an aggressive player. Should have aggressive choices. If I'm a cautious player, I should have cautious choices. If I'm a sneaky player, I should have sneaky choices. And I want all these players, their personalities, they want to do a certain thing. The more you can make it seamless that what they want to do can be done in your game, and they can figure out how to do it, the more fun that is going to be for the player. And in a sense, when my personality is affecting gameplay, that gameplay is now the thing that other players have to take into account. Their personalities have to take into account. So, in a sense, I'm not only connecting with the OODA loop. Not only connects the player to gameplay, it connects the player individuality to other players, their individuality in the game. And if with a good OODA loop, you can have all different types of personalities in the game, and they're interacting with each other, and they're presenting obstacles to each other and challenging each other in a way where it's a very social thing. There's this ecosystem of personalities, interacting with each other and coming up with this experience. And the OODA loop is really a critical part of that. You may have a good OODA loop. You make it such that players have the information that they need. They can do what they want to do, and when they want to do it. And you have all these individual players, individual personalities interacting in that way. For lack of a better word, that's where the fun of a game is. And so the OODA loop is where a lot of the fun of the game is. You strengthen it, and you can have a lot of fun. You degrade it, you ruin it for people, and it's not going to be fun. And that's where the why comes in. So these things, categories that Edo was talking about, he was talking about rules that ruin or degrade the OODA loop in the game. And you degrade the OODA loop, and now the players cannot interact with the game in the way they want to, or they can't interact with each other in the way they want to. It's hindered, it's slowed down. It's almost like, the game is blasting white noise at you, where you can't do what you want to do. You can't interact with the other players at the level that you want to do it, and that really is it really ruins the fun. And so I think that's what the OODA loop answers. It answers it's the piece that allows the fun to come in the game. Um, and so I think this is I like to talk about this because I think that's an important aspect in game design. We all intuitively know what this is, but I think the OODA loop really gives us a framework to talk about it more. So those are my additional thoughts to Edo's discussion on game mechanics for rules that ruin board games. So I'm constantly working on this theory. It's just something new I'm doing, and so I'm constantly working on it. If you agree or disagree or have a different view on it, I'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to um, to put something in the comments, give me feedback in the comments, or email me or PM me. I would love to hear from you. Just want to say thank you for watching the video, and look forward to talking to you more. Thanks a lot.